Change is good. Change is good. Change is good. My first New Thought teacher, Reverend Dr. Lisa Stewart, had a bumper sticker on the front of the podium that was the front of what we saw when we were looking at her right across the front. It said, "Change is good." And she would walk around going, "Change is good, honey. Change is good." You see, I came to that center when I was the anti-change. I wrote that song I just sang to convince myself that it was good. I didn't like change. And yet everything in my life was a mess and needed to be changed. And I went into that center and I said, okay, all this stuff you're talking about, being able to live a life that works and to be able to express fully, I want that. She was like, okay, we can treat for that. That's our word for affirmative prayer in Science of Mind. She said we can do an affirmative prayer for that. And so we did. I started by asking her to pray for me to make the rent, right? And every single time she would start her treatment and she would say something about my worthiness. And I'm like, come on now, focus. I'm thinking to myself, focus. It was money. That's what we needed. Exactly $500. That's what I need. That's what I need you to pray for. And she'd come back to, okay. And she'd pray for my worthiness, my consciousness of worthiness to expand. And we kept working and she kept explaining to me, this is how the law works, that we get what we are. And that if I wanted my life to be different, that I had to embrace a consciousness that was different. Sounds simple, but it wasn't at the time. So I started little by little embracing a consciousness that was different, embracing the next rung up on the ladder, right? The next best feeling thought and belief and action. I kept reaching a little bit higher, expecting a little bit more out of life. I was working at it. And the next thing you know, this song was very autobiographical because the next thing you know, everything fell apart. Relationship, house, job, everything started to be a question mark in my life. And I go running over to the center and I'm like, excuse me, hi. I've been doing that affirmative prayer thing you taught us and this is not good. This is really not good. And she said, what do you mean? And I said, well, I lost my temporary job that I had. And she goes, was that the job that you wanted? Well, no, I wanted to be playing music full time. And she goes, uh-huh. And I'm like, yeah, but. So everything that I had lost were things that I said I didn't want. Things that I was treating to have a different consciousness of worthiness around. A different consciousness of worthiness that would allow me to embrace playing music full time, that would allow me to embrace being in a relationship that was loving and harmonious. So what happened? Lost the job, lost the relationship because they didn't match where I was going with the new consciousness. So we have to be willing to change, to grow. And I know that sounds so simple, but it's not sometimes, is it? We have to be willing to release the life we've planned, to live the life that we're meant to live, as Joseph Campbell would say. Those plans will get you every time, right? We need to be able to release that archaic idea of where we think our life is supposed to go in order to allow it to unfold. See, this willingness to change is everything. I was just getting comfortable, as the song says, in my new place. And then the next thing you know, I wasn't sure if I was going to have that place or anything else that I had counted on. And that's when I learned about the term divine discontent. Divine discontent, that beautiful thing that allows us, that spawns us forward out of complacency. Divine discontent is where you know there's something pulling you, but you're not quite sure how to get there yet. You're in that in-between place. Ever been there, like during a pandemic when you're in that in-between place about a lot of things in life and you're just wanting to get to the other side of it? Well, it's all part of the process. And it's about learning to be willing to trust that process, trusting the process of life, knowing that inherent in every desire and demand is the mechanics for its fulfillment, as the Upanishads taught us, the ancient Indian text. Inherent in every desire and demand is the mechanics for its fulfillment. In other words, we wouldn't even have an urge for the more if it wasn't a divine urge through us. And keep in mind, this is very important, because sometimes in that in-between place, we want to get frantic and rush to the next thing. Keep in mind that urge of spirit moving through us is never urgent. It's not urgent. The urging of spirit is never urgent. The urging of spirit is never urgent. Or as I like to say, urgency is never of spirit. So if you're trying to decide, oh, is this spirit-led? Is this new decision, this thing I'm thinking about doing, is it spirit-led? Well, are you feeling urgent about it? Are you feeling like I have to do this or my good is going to pass me by? That's not the urging of spirit. Be still and know. And trust in that unfolding, allowing change to come naturally. Sometimes change comes through the waiting. Through the waiting. I love spring, and I love how in just a week's time, you'll see bare branches bud up and start to pop open with blossoms. I love seeing, the first signs of it's almost time to plant gardens around here, but seeing when it is time, I love seeing the growth burst through the soil. And I was thinking about what we have in common when it comes to growth, what we have in common with the seed. Any seed, really. Any seed, it needs three things. It needs three things to grow. And that's the right temperature, moisture, and light. We need, on our spiritual journey, those three things. The right temperature, moisture, and light. But let me explain a little more about what I mean by the right temperature, moisture, and light. The right temperature, when you're growing something, a plant, a shrub, a tree, you look at the growing zone. And something that is hardy in Georgia may not grow in North Carolina, in the mountains of North Carolina, especially because it's colder there. So temperature really speaks to, for us on the spiritual journey, being in the right temperature to grow, to blossom, to bloom. It really speaks to being in the right environment. I remember going to an Al-Anon meeting years and years and years ago, and I was so disappointed because I'd had some really good news, and I'd gone to the people that I used to hang out with to tell them about my good news, and they just kind of poo-pooed it, They were just like, oh, well, that's never going to work, and that's never going to be a good thing. And so I came to this Al-Anon meeting, and I was sharing, that I was really excited that I'd turned a corner in my life and things were looking great. And I went to share it with these people, and this older lady in the room, she said, well, honey, you went to the hardware store looking for bread. So when we are trying to make sure that we are in the proper environment, the right temperature, the right growing zone, that environment that lends itself to our best bloom, we need to make sure we're not going to the hardware store looking for bread. We need to make sure, take a look around. Are you inspired by the people who surround you? Are you inspired by the people that you spend your time with? Do they lift you up, light your flame, see the truth, the love and the light of you, in you, as you? Do they see that? Do they encourage it? Do they fan your flame? That's what we need to look at when we're looking at our environment. The dirt, the soil that we are in, the soil. What soil have we plopped ourselves down in? Have we planted ourselves in? My sister-in-law is getting ready to move her family into a new home, and she was telling my wife Angie, she said, I'm taking that dirt. She was talking about the dirt that she had composted for years, had been working with this soil and taking the dirt from the chicken coop and the worms and the compost from cooking and all this stuff, and put it into this soil, and it was this rich, dense, just vibrant vegetables growing out of the soil, right? And she was like, I'm taking that dirt. I'm like, you pack your poop, girl. You do that. You go ahead. Because it's in that yucky stuff that this alchemical thing happens, and it turns into something magnificent. And the same is true for us. The same is true for us. We know we need to check our environment and see what kind of soil we're living in, but also be grateful for the soil that we're in. All the yucky, mucky stuff that we've been through to get us to now, we need to honor that. Honor that and see that it is fuel for our transformation, fuel for our bloom, and not lose our fuel trying to pretend it doesn't exist. Oh, that thing I did 10 years ago. Oh, that relationship I had, whatever. Looking at things that we think we could have done better and judging ourselves and having guilt or remorse or even anger and resentment toward another person. That's stealing our fuel instead of fueling the transformation that is always the ever evolving journey of us. We're always transforming, right? We're always ever evolving, growing beings. So in making sure that we have the right temperature, we need to look at that environment, that location, that soil, honor it, and make sure we're surrounding ourselves moving forward with that which we wish to experience. And then not being surprised when we change a thing and something out here changes. When we change in here, something out here is going to change, right? I was so shocked. I'm like, why is everything changing? Because you said you wanted something different. Embrace that. That's the power of your co-creative nature. Embrace that. So the next thing that we need is that moisture. And what I mean by that moisture on our spiritual journey is the same as what the moisture does to the seed. The moisture, when the water gets to the seed, it softens the shell. And if it wasn't for that, the roots couldn't spring forth into the dirt below, and the shoot couldn't pop up above and start to go up through the dirt to become the tree or the shrub or the plant or whatever it's supposed to be. It's that softening that's so important for us on our spiritual journey, that softening. We get in such a habit of being crusty and hard sometimes. Just put our head down and get through this thing. Whatever it is, we're just going to get through it. But it's when we're soft and receptive to life, being open and receptive to the living spirit of truth moving through us, that's when we flourish. That's when we bloom. That's when we continually flow with life. I remember being on a vacation with my wife before we were married, and we got in a conversation about something, and you know how it goes. You're just moving along. You're thinking everything's good. Next thing you know, both parties are like, "How did we get here?" And you're not on the same page. And now, let me say, this is the best relationship I've ever had in my life. I'm so grateful for it. We never fight or we don't have lumpy rugs. Nothing gets shoved under the rug, right? We work to solution with whatever comes up for us. So here we were on vacation, we're having a great time. Next thing you know, we're in this place, and we're like this, and I felt this old paradigm sneak up in me, this old pattern of behavior that didn't want to change. It wanted to be safe in that hard shell. It wanted to be safe in that hard shell, because me in years prior would have been like, well, and turn my back, which is what I did on that vacation in our beautiful little condo, in our beautiful little room, on our beautiful little vacation, in our beautiful little life. I turned ugly and I turned my back and I huffed and I pulled the covers a little bit. And she said, "Christine Snow, we do not turn away in this family. We turn in." I instantly started to cry. We do not turn away in this family. We turn in. And we have always turned in. We continually turn in. But you can be single and take this advice. It's about turning in to life, turning in to the beloved presence that moves through us, turning in and softening to let the light and the nourishment and the water and the living spirit of truth into us so that it can flow out from us instead of being this hard, crusty little shell that the water just runs off of. So we have to be in the right location, check our environment, honor the soil that we've been through, and be open and receptive and soften to let life in. I feel like we all need like this huge softening retreat. The world needs a softening retreat right now after going through a year of a global pandemic, right? Now more than ever, we need to remember to soften. You're not putting your trust in the personalities of people, in this or that. You're putting your trust in God, your trust that there is a universal power and presence that's moving through life, even now, always, and in all ways. And we continually soften so that we can be porous to that. And then the next thing, right? The next thing is the light. Of course, the plant's going to stretch and grow. I love the little plants on my windowsill in my kitchen, and I'll come in every day and I'll turn it just a little bit so the other side gets the sun, because they continually start to bend toward the sun, don't they? We need to be willing to bend toward the sun. Willing, that means being willing to change and to grow and to lean into Spirit, to trust that we are governed, guided, and guarded, as Dr. Ernest Holmes would say, by that universal intelligence moving through life, governed, guided, and guarded, pulled forward, being willing to lean toward Spirit, willing to know that if you want a different life, you have to be a different way, but then not be surprised when things change. Being willing to grow, willing to be different, to have different. Get that. We have to be willing to be different, to have different. We get what we are in life, so we need to figure out what within us needs to change if we're not getting the result on the outside that we want in our health, in our finances, in our relationships, in our communities, in our connection to Source, any of those things, right? Not resisting, but moving with the flow of life. Not resisting, but moving and trusting. You got to change to grow, and we're always being called to grow. Relax. Soften. Lean toward the light. And so it is. And so we anchor that. Let's anchor that together in a meditation. So just breathe. I accept the good. I accept change. I am willing to grow, willing to soften, willing to let the nourishment in, willing to let the light in, willing to be that light. I know that my nature is change. I am an ever-evolving being, ever evolving, ever growing, ever upward and outward expression. And I allow it. Ever evolving. Always life is a movement toward my wholeness, a movement toward the recognition that I'm already whole, perfect, and complete. I accept. And so I invite you to open your mind and your heart in this moment. I accept. I am willing. I lean into life. I allow something new. I allow a new idea. I allow a new experience. I allow the best version of me right here, right now. And then I allow the next one and the next one. I allow life to be a flow. I allow. I trust, and I know that life is an ever-evolving motion. I'm one with it. I am one with this power and presence that created all life out of itself. And I am forever and always guided, governed, and guarded as I allow myself to change and to grow and to know that all is well.